going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign of what's going to happen.
Being emissions free in 30 years. Plain and simple. If we don't act now, what's at stake here?
The South of the United States will no longer be used for, farming or, have days that you can't go outdoors. The sea level rise, the die-off of the natural ecosystems, it gets quite extreme. So it's almost apocalyptic, but that's what's at stake if you don't start investing now in stopping the emission. So we have an open source model. We're going to show that if Texas had slightly more in a connection, they wouldn't have had a problem.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And guys, I come back with that video just to make you think. And remember, I tell you that the New World Order has everything planned out. And we see the New World Order at work in Texas, guys. Their fingerprints are all over the place. We have a privately held company, ERCOT, and we know that Texas has its own grid. Turns off the electricity, not prepared for what happened. Now, don't get me wrong. They haven't had a storm like this in a long time. But you do not cut off people's electricity. You have the money, and you definitely have the money to make sure those places are winterized. We know they have the money. But guys, don't forget, it's definitely all planned out. Now we have Bill Gates on Good Morning America speaking about climate change. And guys, we know he's always ahead of disasters. But he says that down south you won't be able to do what? You won't even be able to go outside. No farmland. Why, guys? Because they created this. Remember, I told you the Rockefellers had already did research. But, guys, they wanted to keep drilling. They wanted to keep drilling because they were getting trillions and trillions of dollars. And guess what, guys? They're going to make more trillions and trillions of dollars. Because what are they doing now? Pushing renewable energy. So what do, guys? They cause a problem. They wait on the reaction. And then they run in with the solution. So they kept drilling. Now the fact is sea levels are rising. And Bill Gates is not lying about it. Sea levels are definitely rising. And now they're coming in with the solution. Energy, clean energy, and they're going to make more trillions and trillions of dollars. But guys, we know all the technology. People that have been murdered, guys, poison. We know that Nikola Tesla studied the ancient Egyptians. He was obsessed with them, trying to give us free energy. We had Stanley Meyer, who basically created a water-powered engine, mysteriously poisoned. So guys, we know how the New World Order works. Because don't forget, everything is planned out. You have a wonderful day.
From the grid, it's working. Texas has its own grid. It is not federally managed. It's managed by the state and a nonprofit group called ERCOT. Well, now those two groups are playing the blame game, trying to figure out why they could not keep the lights on for Texans.
Every source of power that the state of Texas has been compromised.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott is leaving no one out when it comes to the state's energy failures.
Whether it be renewable power such as wind or solar, but also, as I mentioned today, access to coal generated power, access to gas generated power also have been compromised.
For context, in 2020, wind and solar energy were responsible for roughly 25% of the state's electricity generation throughout the year. That compared to natural gas, coal, and nuclear power, which combined for roughly 69%.
The natural gas generators are the ones that we were all counting on to provide the electricity. Some coal plants were supposed to fire up also, and they didn't answer the bell either.
Even if wind was a major source, the reason behind that failure is much of the equipment has not been winterized, which can include using heaters and insulated pipes. That's something places like Minnesota do, and their wind turbines don't shut down in the cold. After a 2011 winter storm in Texas crippled power, a report recommended winterizing power sources. According to HERS, the recommendations were not followed.
The warnings have been there for years, and Governor Abbott has done nothing. Before that, Governor Perry did nothing. This was a train wreck on the way to happening 10 years ago.
What the challenges are and what has happened, and that is though the companies that generate the power, their operations have frozen up or have tripwired and are non-operational. That is the lead reason why there is a shortage of power for the people who are lacking power right now. There is an additional reason causing a lack of natural gas arriving to power generation centers across the state, and that's because the ability to both manufacture and to ship and transport natural gas has been frozen also. And so those are two problems, but we must also point out that the way that ERCOT has handled this entire situation has been completely unacceptable, and that is exactly why today I issued an executive order calling for an emergency item for the Texas legislature to begin immediately to investigate what is going on at ERCOT. We need greater transparency, greater explanations. The public has a right to know what ERCOT is doing, how they are making their decisions, why they are making their decisions the way they are, and to speed up their decision-making process, because it is completely unacceptable for people to go more than a day without power. They should have rolling operations so that some people will have power at least for several hours or a half a day during the day to warm their homes, to take a shower, to charge their phones, whatever the case may be. So the way that ERCOT is operated is completely unacceptable, and we are going to drill down into it this session and make sure that we have changes to that very question. My team has been talking to all the natural gas producers and suppliers in the state of Texas all afternoon to accelerate the process of their ability to get it. And their answer is it's just frozen right now. It's frozen in the pipeline. It's frozen at the rig. It's frozen in the transmission line.
So,
and
Governor,
so they are incapable, the natural gas providers are incapable of being able to come up with a gas that feeds into the generators that generate the power that will send power to people's residences there in the Dallas. Question that I am asking and that the public needs an answer to from ERCOT. ERCOT is the organization that is operating the transmission across the entire state of Texas. ERCOT has not been transparent about this. We, all of us, need answers and transparency from ERCOT to make sure that people get the answers they need, but more importantly, get the power they need. That's what people want more than
the earth. This recent storm has caused massive power outages in Texas, and the state's governor, Greg Abbott, blamed frozen wind turbines and said it shows the Green New Deal would, quote, be a deadly deal for the United States. How would you respond to that, Bill?
Well, in terms of the current situation, he's actually wrong. The wind turbines, you can make sure they can deal with the cold. It probably wasn't anticipated for the wind turbines that far south, but the ones up in Iowa and North Dakota do have the ability to not freeze up. Actually, the main capacity that's gone out in Texas is not the wind. It's actually some of the natural gas plants that were also not ready for these supercold temperatures. So even though, viewing this as an attack on renewable energy is, in this case, is wrong. In fact, the point he's making, which is that as you rely more and more on wind and solar, that reliability will be a challenge, and you'll need three things to maintain reliability while driving renewables over 80%. One is more transmission. So we have an open source model. We're going to show that if Texas had slightly more in a connection, they wouldn't have had a problem. The second is energy storage. Still hard to store these amounts of energy. And finally, sources of energy that aren't weather dependent but are green, like nuclear. And so those three will be an important part of the zero emission electricity system.